My name is Tarun Pathak. I'm Senior Analyst with Counterpoint Research. So in the next 5 minutes, what I'd like to do is give a brief overview on India handset industry and how the market is changing. So to start with, if we look at the recent quarter, that is Q1 2016, which just surpassed, if we look at the global scale, there are a couple of interesting things which happened quarter on quarter. So for the first time ever, we have seen Apple's growth came to a halt after 35 successive quarters. And for the first time, we have seen number of entrants were less than the number of exits in the mobile phone industry. And the third major trend which happened in Q1 2016 was that for the first time ever, global smartphone industry declined by 2% since the inception of the smartphone segment. But amid all these trends, there was one bright spot. The Indian smartphone market grew by 23% year on year in Q1 2016. So to put these numbers into perspective, if we take the top 10 markets of the world in terms of smartphone penetration, we have seen like India was the lone bright spot in this particular trend, which grew by 23% year on year. And rest of all the major economies, be it China, be it US, they are declined by either 2%, 4%. You talk about Indonesia, Brazil, there was degrowth in that particular market. So that's what was particular one of the reasons you have seen lately that number of the global players are now coming to India to understand this market where the next level of the growth will happen. So to deep dive into India as a market, I'm sure a lot of esteemed panelists, they have covered this slide. We have over 1 billion mobile phone subscribers right now in India. The unique phone users are close to 600 million if I take the numbers up to Q1 2016. And if we talk about the number of smartphone users right now, we have close to 240 million installed base of smartphone users. And we surpassed US in terms of that. About all these mind-boggling numbers, one thing is there that we are still sitting on 30% smartphone penetration. So just imagine the numbers when we are growing at the rate of like 50% or 60% on top of this number. So if we look this particular trend closely, in 2016, it is estimated that 250 million phones will be sold in India alone. And out of that, 135 million will be smartphones alone. And what are the trends which are driving the growth of Indian smartphone industry? Number one, if we look at people, there's still major chunk of people which are still sitting on feature phones. If we look into the rural areas, people are still using the feature phones, and they are shifting from feature phones to the smartphones. And to put that number into perspective, we have almost, like I said, 600 mobile phone users in the country. Almost 350 are still sitting on feature phones. So this shows that there is a tremendous shift which is going to happen. People are using phones more as a companion device. They are consuming content all the way. They are onto the social networking. They are using their devices like any time before. If you look at the trend from 2 years, 3 years down the line, the things have been totally different, the way you interact with your device right now. So there has been one of the study which says that in one particular day, we use our phone for more than 150 times, which is a big, big number, exceeding of all other commodities we use so far in one particular day. So where we are heading, so since this session is all about Make in India, the next session, so I want to put some numbers into perspective. Here, if you look at from the numbers perspective, it looks really great. There have been a couple of numbers which are out there in the press from the ministry and all. If you look at the over 100 million plus mobile phones were manufactured, assembled in India alone in the last 12 months. And if we look at the number of the OEMs which are doing that, in 2014, we had just Samsung and Micromax who were doing the manufacturing or rather assembling here in India. And in fast forward to 2016, we have close to 30 brands which have their manufacturing or assembling operations in India. So what does that mean? That we are sitting on a huge number of like growing user base of smartphones and mobile phone users, and how to tap this opportunity. Because if you look at the number of mobile phone vendors who have their operations in India, most of them are like assembling phones, right? For example, most of the operations facilities, they are assembling operations. So the growth one is okay, where we have seen like 1.0, where we have seen that, okay, the assembling operations are there. Now, how would the growth 2.0, where we can convert this assembling into real manufacturing hub? So, for example, we don't want to make India as a land of assembling operations. We want to create it a real value addition with IPRs, with design, be it like, for example, people are saying that Chinese brands are not really aggressive in India, and they have started manufacturing in India. But people don't really talk with it's not the real manufacturing, it is basically an assembling. The design and the IP still sits in China, and there is a huge potential which we can unleash as a country here if we tap into these particular resources. So these are the some few stats, and I'll leave this session open to the esteemed panelists to discuss how we can move from this growth 1.0 to 2.0 going forward. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much.